From the latest results with the United States presidential race to the first Congressional District race, I talk one-on-one with Post and Courier columnist and author Brian Hicks for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Brian Hicks, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing great. Yourself?
Pretty good.
That's good to hear. You know, me and you actually spoke. I'm looking right at this particular location right here in front of City Hall just last week. And you basically told me, hey, I trust the polls to a certain degree. What polls are you trusting right now?
None of them, actually. It's kind of funny. The national polls, I thought, were extremely misleading. And even for like our local state races, I don't think the internal polls that the candidates had were very good either. I think they were all off, and I don't know what the problem is, but that entire industry seems to be in disarray right now.
And as a matter of fact, you told me that you thought Lynn Bennett was going to be toast, as well as Sandy Senate and a couple of others, but the results were not going to be as bad as expected, obviously with the election results. Obviously, Lynn Bennett's back in the State House. Right now, it's a too close to call race for Sandy Senate. I know Chip Campson's back in as well as Larry Grooms. But were those particular results surprising to you?
You know what I think the problem was that me and a lot of other people had? We were looking at those 2018 midterms and how the county has changed, and it is changing a little bit. But a presidential election electorate is a lot different than a midterm electorate. Different people are coming out to the polls. And I don't even think the candidates thought that. I know that a lot of our incumbent lawmakers were extremely worried about their chances, but it looks like they're all going to get reelected, state level.
State level. And let me bring you down to the local level. Kristen Graziano, she's speaking right now in North Charleston. She is the new Charleston County Sheriff. Obviously, she upsetted incumbent Al Cannon, who has been the sheriff since 1988. She is the first woman ever to be elected sheriff in the state of South Carolina. Let me ask you this about 1988. What is the biggest difference between then and right now about local law enforcement?
Oh, I don't know what the biggest difference is. I don't know what to make of that race, to be quite honest with you. I'd like to give you some sort of thing. I can tell you more about what it says about the voters.
Please.
So,
yeah.
I think you look at this and, there was this whole sort of the Republicans can't compete in Charleston County anymore. That was sort of the thing. I mean, they didn't put up anybody for auditor. They didn't put up anybody for treasurer when they used to win those offices all the time. And I think the 2018 midterms really kind of took it out of them. But what we saw in this election, we saw, a Democratic majority vote in Charleston County. And for whatever reason, they decided to replace Al Cannon after 32 years. But they chose to return Scarlett Wilson, another Republican. I'm not saying I'm heartened by the outcome. I'm heartened by the fact that they seem to be looking at the individual races, which is, I think, what everybody should do. Because, I think the straight party ticket should be gone. You should be able to push a button and just vote for people up and down the aisle. You got to know things about these races. I don't know what the Al Cannon vote says. Police has become a lot more political. I guess that's a change since 1988. Although I have to admit, in 1988, I was still in college and not really paying attention to police politics.
Okay. Well, and you talk about, obviously, Al Cannon. He told, obviously, the media in the press conference earlier today in North Charleston, he says he believes the ACLU played a big role in his loss. Was that just part of his problem?
I don't know. I haven't paid much attention to what the ACLU does. They've gotten a bit more strident in recent years. I think they're under new management down here, but they really got into this whole police thing, and the sheriff probably stirred up some people. He was mad about some of the stuff that was going on, and he spoke out about the protests over George Floyd's killing, which of course then morphed into a riot one night in downtown Charleston. And he talked a lot about the politics of defund the police, which has been a Republican talking point this season. And I don't know if maybe that didn't resonate with voters in, Democratic leaning Charleston County or what, or if they just thought, well, he's been there 32 years. Let's try somebody else. I don't know what they did, but it clearly wasn't just a blind partisan vote, because you look at things like Scarlett Wilson,
Right.
or you look at the coroner's race.
Right.
We had a whole lot of mixing ballots, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I mixed my ballot pretty good.
And I'm literally looking at her office right here. Let's talk about Scarlett Wilson. How did she resonate with the voters, and why didn't they resonate with Al Cannon?
Well, I can tell you that Scarlett is seen as very fair and very professional, and she does not seem to have even a whiff of partisanship about her. And I think the voters like that. I think they like that she is just, a professional prosecutor doing her job, and you never see her getting dragged into political fights. Not that Al Cannon did that a lot, but I think that it's just Scarlett's professionalism and fairness, and the way she handled some, pretty high profile and tough cases in, the past few years.
Right.
I think that I think the voters paid attention to that, and I was heartened by that.
And obviously, you talk about partisanship. Partisanship. That is obviously that came into a big play with the coroner's office. Why was that the case in your mind?
I don't know. I do not understand that, but I can talk to you all day about why in the world are we electing a coroner. For that matter, why are we electing a lot of these offices? But I don't know what that came in. I don't know what caused that.
Yeah, and should the state legislature, as many people have told me, look into this and say, hey, should these be more, assigned offices versus elected offices, appointed office versus elected offices?
I think that they probably should. I've thought that a long time. I think there may be some more support for it, since, well, there would be here, because Republicans control the legislature. If they're no longer sure of winning them, maybe they'd be more interested in talking about that. But I think both parties like having those races to run. But, I don't think you should be elected to be coroner, because you or I could get elected to do that, or sheriff for that matter. I mean, I could get elected sheriff, and, I don't know anything about policing. I think some of these professional jobs, I don't know.
And, Cannon basically said in the press conference earlier that he's proud of the way the detention center has handled itself during the coronavirus, and is excited about the building of the new juvenile detention center. What exactly will be his legacy?
I think he's built the modern sheriff's department. I mean, let's say I wasn't here to see what he was doing when he started, but, they've built a new detention center. They got a new juvenile detention center. He's built up the staff. He's built up their equipment.
Right.
I thought it was kind of interesting that Sheriff-elect Graziano, am I saying that right?
Yes, sir, Graziano. Yeah.
She's talking about, racial bias and those sorts of things. And Sheriff Cannon had actually been doing that for a while. I'd actually written a couple of columns about that. He'd been putting all the deputies through that. And I thought that they were pretty modern sheriff's office. I guess the voters just decided they wanted somebody new.
Why didn't he articulate that?
What about all the
Racial bias and all? Yeah.
I don't know if that got into partisanship or what, if he didn't think that would resonate with Republican voters. It should, but I don't know. I don't know what he thought about that. But I know he's been doing it. I've probably written 2 or 3 columns about it in the last 2 or 3 years when all the deputies have gone through it. And I've spoken to him about it before. So that's, that's just kind of a mystery. But I would have just written it off to Democrats having more votes in this county if somebody like Scarlett hadn't got reelected, or if Sandy Sin had been defeated when she's got a Senate district that Joe Cunningham won 2 years ago with 57% of the vote. So I don't know. They're making very personal choices right now.
And I'm going to get to Mr. Cunningham in just a second. But during our conversation that we briefly had as I was going to run over to the bus and you're going to run over to the History Museum here, you basically said, hey, the Republican Party has blinders on their faces. Let me ask you this, Brian. How many have in Charleston County? Let me ask you this. How many blinders did the Democrats have on election night?
Plenty. They had plenty. They expected to take all these legislative seats, and they were showing all these internal polls that said, we're going to win this, we're going to win that. And they were telling me stuff like, they were going to take Chip Campson's seat and stuff like that. And I don't know. I mean, they actually called me when I was talking about in one column about, well, I think the Republicans going to win this race. And they called and got all mad at me and said, what are you doing saying the Republicans going to win that race? It's like, well, they might. Oddly enough, the one race they called me about wasn't a legislative race, it was another race. And I was actually dead wrong about that one too.
Oh,
so,
no.
That's okay. I told you I'd be wrong.
Right.
You reminded me.
Yeah. And I was writing down everything when you were saying that too. But you also talked to me in that discussion about shy Biden voters. How many have you talked to in Charleston County? And what exactly are they shy when it comes to him?
I don't know that I've talked to any of them, but I've seen other people reporting, talking to people out and saying, yeah, I'm voting for Biden, but don't tell my neighbors because Trump is so popular in South Carolina. I've seen that sort of thing. That's what they're shy about. It's sort of a cultural thing. Trump's popular here, so if I vote for Biden, my neighbor's going to give me grief. I don't know if there were a whole lot of those outside of Charleston County.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you, what cities and towns in the Charleston County area were really going for Trump, and which ones were going for Biden?
Well, Biden carried Charleston County as a whole, 55-42, something like that.
Okay.
I haven't looked at the breakdowns of the precincts. I would suspect that Biden did well in Charleston and North Charleston, and probably not as well in Mount Pleasant. That would be my guess.
And let me turn to the 1st Congressional District. You basically said, hey, listen, Nancy Mace should have moved to the center of the obviously what was going on with the 1st Congressional District race. Obviously, she's the presumptive nominee for the 1st Congressional District race as far as becoming the next Congresswoman. But where should in a couple of weeks, former United States Congressman Joe Cunningham move?
Where should he move? I don't know. I don't know what he does next here.
Actually, I mean, what should he have done prior to last night? Where should he have moved prior to last night?
I don't think he was in a bad spot. I think he was okay as kind of a moderate Democrat. You have to be a moderate Democrat, and I think he really is moderate. But I think it was just a different electorate. More people turned out to vote for Trump, and he won in 2018 by a 4,000 vote margin, and he carried that in Charleston County. And I don't remember what percentage of the vote that was back then, but he was within a tenth of a point of where Biden and Harrison ran in Charleston County. So he did here, but there were more people turning out in the other counties of the 1st District to vote for Trump, and I think Mace benefited from that.
And I
told you I didn't like her campaign strategy.
Right.
She might have known more than me staying to the right. I mean, the traditional thing is you run to your parties, to the right or the left, depending on where you're running, and then for the general, you move to the middle to attract the most voters, the widest swath. I don't know that model is working anymore, but she kept talking about the Paris Island thing, and I didn't really think that mattered very much, especially after even Lindsey Graham said, no, that's not an issue. But she was talking about it as of yesterday, the day before, just before the voting. And I think I don't know. I think she would have had better issues than that one. I don't see how that resonated, but she had the benefit of running with Lindsay on the ballot and President Trump on the ballot.
And
I'm not saying she was horrible. She did better than Katie Arrington. I just didn't think Paris Island was the issue to make the first district rest on.
as a matter of fact, you were telling me last week that at that particular time prior to last night, Nancy was making some of the same mistakes as Katie Arrington. How many mistakes did Joe Cunningham make?
I don't know what he did that was wrong other than be a Democrat in the first district. They tied all this stuff that he voted with Pelosi 90% of the time, and a lot of that's procedural stuff. But I thought he took the right stance on the offshore drilling stuff. I thought he was with our delegation most of the time. I didn't think he was that far out there. I didn't think he was extreme at all. So I don't know what he did wrong, other than not change his political affiliation.
And I know that this is something that I saw on Twitter, but I think Meg Kennard from the AP wrote this, quote, "It looks like Joe Cunningham isn't quite ready to concede the election." And this is obviously a statement coming from Joe Cunningham's camp. It says Cunningham for Congress campaign manager Allie Waters released the following statement on the election results of SCO1. She says this, quote, "There are tens of thousands of ballots outstanding across the district. Both candidates have agreed that every ballot must be counted and every voice heard before an election result is called. In those thousands of ballots, what county could save him right now?"
I don't think any county can save him in the first district. I think Charleston's where he was going to run up his biggest margin.
Okay.
And I think Charleston's all in now.
All in. And you talked earlier about.
But I don't know. He did. Seems like in 2018 he did better than expected in Dorchester County. He didn't win it, but it closed the margin. But I think he would have to win it. I think it's pretty much over. But I'm sure the Republicans are mad that he's not conceding. But they would do the same thing. I wouldn't blame them.
And I know they're still counting ballots right now in Dorchester County as we talk. But let me take you up to really the Senate race, obviously between Lindsey Graham and Jamie Harrison. Of course, Lindsey Graham keeps his seat. And I know that when we talked earlier last week, you said, hey, it was a smart turnaround for the Harrison camp to use that ad that featured Dr. Bill Bledsoe. But how many votes did that ad take away from Jamie on yesterday?
I don't know if it had any effect whatsoever. I don't think it added that many votes to him. I don't think it took that many away from Jamie. Somebody was talking about it yesterday about, man, what a trick that was. And I think I even told you, I said, I would have written a column about that and said that was underhanded if he'd run the ad like, hey, this guy's great, do this. But he ran it as an attack ad on this guy, highlighting things he thought Republicans would want to hear. Like he's not right for South Carolina. He's pro Second Amendment. He's anti-abortion. All that stuff. That made it clever. But at the end of the day, he just didn't peel off enough votes from Lindsey, if any at all. I think he ended up with maybe a percentage or two statewide. So it didn't do any good. That was the race where the polls were way, way off. And, we talked about that. I don't think either one of us believed those polls last week.
And, let me ask you this, because you said Nancy should have moved to the center as far as the general election. Where should Jamie Harrison have moved as far as the general election in your mind?
I don't think he could move far enough to the right to win statewide in South Carolina. I thought he was fairly moderate. Okay. I don't remember what he said about, this defund the police stuff that, has everybody's been talking about. By the way, Congress doesn't really fund the police, but whatever. But I don't know. I don't know other than changing his party affiliation. I don't know how he could have moved and expected to win in South Carolina. He underperformed what Vince Shaheen did in his first race against Haley in
Right.
2010. And 2010, as you recall, was a big Republican year. And yet Shaheen, who by the way lost
Right.
last night, he did better, I think, than Harrison did this time. So I don't know what he could have done. I think that there were some unrealistic expectations out there. I never believed he could win statewide in South Carolina. Just Democrats don't win statewide here.
When will that change?
You know, when enough people from New York and Illinois move in, I guess. I don't know. There's also some, you know, there's changing dynamics with the younger generation coming up. I don't know that that's going to happen any soon. It seems like I've heard some of the political scientists say, oh, that's 10 years off. I think it might be a little further than that.
Now we have to look towards the gubernatorial race coming up in a few years. Who do you see on the Democratic side and who do you see on the Republican side as far as obviously candidates?
Well, I think Governor McMaster plans on running for re-election. I have no idea who the Democrats are going to put up. It'll be an off year, midterm election. I don't know. I don't know who they go to on their bench. I don't know that the Democrats have got anybody that can, you know, mount a successful challenge to Governor McMaster, because there's nobody really in the state right now with name ID. And Harrison was able to build his name ID and do all that because I think I told you, Lindsey Graham should have been listed on Harrison's, you know, election contribution form, because Harrison was getting all this money from people who didn't like Lindsey. And he was able to put these commercials on TV and raise his name ID. And I just don't think you're going to see that kind of support pour in for a Democrat to run against Henry McMaster, because, you know, there's not many people who don't like Henry.
And you talk about obviously the millions of dollars that were poured into this particular race. Was that part of Jamie's problem for losing last night?
I don't think so. I mean, I don't know that it did any good based on how wide the spread was in that race. And this was like $100 million Senate campaign, which is just unheard of. And make no mistake, Senator Graham got tons of money too, and most of it was from outside the state too.
Right.
But at the end of the day, I think we've seen that people are going to vote how they want, and these ads don't make a whole lot of difference, I don't think. But, you know, there's an entire political consulting industry that depends on that money, so expect it to continue.
Brian Hicks, thank you so much for your time. And again, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, anytime.